Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of your Mental Health Awareness Show right here on Self-Discovery Media. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is JD Mass. A race for what? Well, he talks about a white man's journey and a guide to healing racism from within. And he says that, racism is currently still a hot topic discussion. Questions have been considered are, does racism exist? Does equality, what does it look like? How do we achieve justice? Anti-Black racism is real. It hasn't been corrected and it won't go away on its own. Aboriginal, Black, Indigenous folks have carried the burden for far too long. It's time for the white folks to take the next step to complete the mission. So St. Louis J.D. Mass releases his book, Race for What? A White Man's Journey to Healing, Guide from Racism from Within. And he tells the story of growing up in a Black community, witnessing racism firsthand, and well as his successes and missteps in building a powerful alliances with the community in which he was raised. The book is recently literally hot off the press. It's part memoir, part how-to, and entirely real. This masterfully woven book takes readers back in time to St. Louis in the 80s and the 90s when Mass was growing up in the circle of creative friends and influencers. The talent he bonded with, such as rapper Nelly, and the set stage for life for music, religion, culture, community development, and politics. We're going to be talking about his work, about racism, about the mental strain that it takes on everybody. There isn't anybody that doesn't have a kickback on this in some way that is a negative. And with this day and age that we're still addressing racism, that we're still looking at divide, and we're still judging people by the color of their skin or their culture or their religion or their sexuality, it really is time for us as a human race to grow up and put these little I'm not even sure what the word is, or even if I could say it on the air, but put these differences aside because it is stopping us as a human race growing and really truly seeing what really is abundant, and that's the person inside. Welcome to the show, JD.
Thank you for having me. What a wonderful introduction.
Thank you. Why are we still talking about racism in 2022? Why is it still such a stigma? Yes, I know we've come far, but we seem to take a few steps forward and then a whole load of steps back. And there's still this conversation because there's still this stigma. And it's why? Why are we still here?
Right. I picked up a young couple. I was driving Uber while I was writing the book, and I picked up a young couple, and they were discussing, and this was a white woman and a mixed race man in their early 20s, and they were discussing, why are we still talking about or celebrating the first Black woman to do this or the first Black, like, that doesn't make me happy to hear that in 2022, it's the first Black somebody to do something. And that in and of itself says a lot.
Oh, it does. But it also, I always say you have to look back in order to move forward more,
Sure.
surely, make sure your steps forward aren't repeating the bad steps of the past. But when we look back and we look at the contributions of women and all people of color, and yet it just seemed to be, and you look back in history, a white man, not even a white woman, a white
Right.
man's tale of everything, like they achieved everything and we were
Right.
dependent on them, which really froze the insecurity of the white man, that he could not share the platform.
I agree. That's really what my steps are all about. And step one being don't take a step, seek some understanding. I
Mm.
really want to know, I want us to look at what was going on with us when this kind of started, that we felt this insecurity, because racism, in its simplest description, is just massive bullying, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
and if we have a bully at a school or somewhere individually, we go, something's going on with that bully. Something happened, right? When even with this Will Smith incident,
Mm.
a lot of us have to reflect, something happened to Will that was just building up, that he
Yes.
made this. But we don't go back and say, what was going on with that made us create this racism thing?
No.
And what type of insecurities is it showing that we would just create a system that judges people and oppresses people based on something we have never met,
Mm.
and is something we can only see from a distance and not get to know them up front. And that is what I want to uncover. And I think by uncovering that, we can allow ourselves some moment to heal.
Oh God, is there some healing that needs to be done? You know, I've always been a person, I really don't care what package you come in, you know, your skin color. It doesn't really mean anything to me in the sense of how I'm going to treat you. It's always about your heart, soul, and your
Right.
character. That's how I see people from the inside out. And I've known and have many friends of color. And I married a Chinese guy. My children are half half, beautiful combination. Um, we have got such an issue with people who are different, never mind even if they're the same color. You know, what economic strata are they from? What education are they from? You know,
Right.
what's their zip code? You know, are they good looking? You
Right.
know, are they a nerd? You know, and it's like we love to take people and put them in little boxes and keep them there, and that's all
Right.
we see them as.
Yeah.
And it's that we're doing it not only a disservice to them, but to
To
ourselves because we're
ourselves.
the depriving
Right.
all that beautifulness that's inside of them.
Sure. That's that's beautifully said, because the thing about racism, in not in the way that it's sort of taught, I guess would be a lack of a better way of saying it, is by teaching only about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And especially true in America. I'm not sure how it is in every colonized nation or European nation, but in
More
America,
advanced as a whole, but yeah, but
but
it's still issues.
we only learn about ourselves. And even in world history, then when we start to learn that, which is in the 10th grade, by the time we've already developed our we're the only ones that matter kind of
Right.
mentality, we learn about European really wars and who took over
Mm,
and went what queens and kings and things of that nature. I remember being taught in college at a Jesuit university that in world history, it was titled, that we don't really need to learn about Eastern cultures because they haven't changed, so they don't really matter. And I'm going, wow, did you just say that comfortably out loud? So it wasn't even the problem that he said it, but it was also just with the level of comfort that he
yes.
could just speak that to a crowd of students. And that
And
is
and
part of it.
believe it.
Yeah,
And believe it. And it's like, oh my God, you're talking world history?
right,
World history.
right,
Even if you were only talking North American history, and you look at that, I'm in Canada, you're in the States, and places like Australia and New Zealand and South Africa, they're all completely made out of immigrants, except for the
right,
people that originated there. I and you can talk about their culture or their background or where they come from as not being important.
right. Yeah. And with that type of ease, and so you see how that translates
Yeah.
even into the news today when we're hearing about the refugees in
Mm.
Ukraine.
Mhm.
And a lot of the news on from MSNBC to Fox to and everything in between has said, at some point some reporter or somebody has said, this is a humanitarian issue. We're not talking about these people of color that have been refugees in other situations. We're
Mm.
talking about Europeans here.
Mm.
And to be able to say that with comfort
Mm.
is the issue that I want to uncover. Like, what is the deep down psychology that we're using and that we've developed that has kept us in this place of feeling that way?
I think they've got a theory. Let's see if you agree with me. Number one, Fox News takes a pimple and makes it a volcanic eruption.
Hmm.
And why do they do that? Because the more they can stir people up, and especially stir them up in fear, the more they control them and pull the puppet strings, because people won't take accountability for their own knowledge to
Right,
investigate, to ask the questions. They'll just be sheeple. Bah, Fox News said,
right.
so
Yeah,
therefore I must hate them, right? Because Fox News said. And we're not taking that accountability ourselves. And the more and more we abstain from making choices or questioning or even demanding that there be more truth and more transparency, the more and more they're in power. And they like to keep us dumbed down, because if we do ask the questions and we still do turn the stones over, we do see what a
right,
whole load of crap is going on. And we would be, and we are showing outrage. And that
right.
with that outrage, Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, and various other movements, where we've turned those stones over and we're saying we're just not going to do this anymore.
And there's this level of what capitalism feeds into with you
Mm-hmm.
have to have ratings and
Yes.
you have to do things. And so I'm not going to sit up here and say, well, socialism is better. Humanity is what we need to be focused
Yes.
on. And the idea that with the isms, and I don't know what they really technically are other than isms to me, but the idea that capitalism is the only one that says
Mm,
we're not thinking of humanity first. Your
no.
first thought has to be about money, which is a
Capitalism.
very big
Money. Yes.
disconnect,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's a disconnect between the social interaction, because even at its core, money was supposed to be just a medium for exchange, not a controlling mechanism
Right.
for development.
It's become the be all and the end all and the driving
Mm-hmm.
force. And we don't look at people for the abundance that they are. We look at them for the dollar sign they are.
Right.
And we've been taught that. And we have been taught that you're less than if your
Yeah.
economics is only at a certain point, and that money buys you all sorts of power. Now, we've seen it in Trumpism,
Right.
Putism, and we've seen it in a few other isms there, where for so long they've lived in their ivory towers, not giving a
Mm-hmm.
damn of what's, the foundation that is being maintaining their ivory tower, in the entitlement
Right.
I'm basically a white man of power and I can do what I want, and I can manipulate anybody, right? All I have to do is keep the truth out of the news, and
Yeah.
anybody who questions or stands up from it, suppress them.
Right.
Now, Putin, of course, either kills them or puts them in jail. Other politicians use the media to demean them,
Right.
to break them down. When are we going to stand up and say, I'm not buying this?
And and I will go as far as saying, even on the progressive media side, often the the whole truth isn't presented. Like
No.
we'll show compassion for these refugees, but we
Mm-hmm.
won't go and tell the story of how they probably wouldn't be refugees if we weren't involved in their country's politics,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
forcing leaders to be a certain way, or forcing leaders who weren't that way out so that we could bring in leaders that would support our mission of controlling those resources, because we define what is wealthy and what is not
Yes.
wealthy. And we're constantly having to go to these other places to get resources. And I think this started when we started racism in the beginning.
Yeah.
As less melanated folks, we were put into these areas where there was less sun. Less sun equals less natural resources, and we had to go to these places. And if you have less, then the moment you have something, Sarah, I don't. And that's how we start to look at it. And we develop
Yes.
this whole survival of the fittest mentality
Mm-hmm.
and this scarcity mentality. And if you look at our economic systems, it's based on that there's a scarcity out there. And yet there's a scarcity to everybody having Jeff Bezos type control and
Yeah.
property and whatnot, but there's not a scarcity to everybody having a comfortable life with natural resources. But we developed this scarcity mentality. And so my son's mom used to say, some people are so used to dysfunction, we don't know what function is when we
True.
see it.
True.
And I think that that's what we took to these other lands, because if you look at the writings of Christopher Columbus, he admitted people were willing to share. People
Mm,
who had melanated skin were in places of an abundance, and they were
mm.
willing to share because they had an abundance to share with. And I'm not saying that they were all perfect and we were
Right.
all bad,
Right.
but there was a level of willingness to share, a level of humanity that existed, that when we came in, we didn't even recognize they were going to give it to us anyway. And we just saw them as having, that means we don't. And now we got to take over. And that mentality has not stopped or ever been challenged enough to be corrected. And I think that is what I'm hoping to uncover here.
When I have a 1-year-old grandson, and of course I've had 3 children a long time ago. So, but watching my 1-year-old grandson, it's when they want something, they're just going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And until you say to them, no, share, or you
Right.
can't just grab, this is where parenting comes in,
Mm-hmm.
community parenting comes
Right.
in, of no, say please, say thank you,
Mm-hmm.
say sorry, share. We're teaching our children those parameters. Where does narcissism come from? It comes from a child who thinks they can just take, and they don't give a damn
Right.
what they've done to those people to take, and that continues on.
Right.
And we see it as a poster child and a few of them out there as the absolute epitome narcissist. Narcissism has been a great deal on the increase. A lot of that is two-parent incomes, out making that money to have the bigger
Mm-hmm.
house because it's deemed important.
Right.
And we've forgotten that we need to raise our children, we need to be there
Right.
to guide them through this process. I have another series called the Forgotten Children series. And I believe that when we leave our children behind, this is why we have dysfunction as adults.
Yeah.
And we're teaching them old patterning,
Uh-huh.
outdated information. We're not teaching them compassion. We're not teaching them to share, and we're not teaching them humility.
Right. And that to me stems from this scarcity mentality,
Yeah.
that if you don't, then I mean, if you have, then I don't, then that means me start to think of myself individually versus as a whole
Yes.
community, right? And the abundance mentality brings forth this village to raise a child mentality. I speak on it in the book. When I met the African Hebrew Israelites in Israel, when I actually went there, at one point I was going through the village for the first time, and they were taking me through, and they said, you can go to any door you want and use the restroom, because I had to use the restroom on the tour. And we were walking through, looked like single family apartment buildings, single story. And I was like, nah, I don't know about doing that. I
Yeah.
couldn't do that here in the States.
You'd be
And
shot.
then exactly. and and so we kept walking, and I said, and the prince that was taking me and my grandmother around said, hey, didn't you say you have to use the restroom? Go in any door. And I went to knock on the door. He said, I didn't say knock. We haven't locked our doors in 40 years. Open the door and go in and tell them you want to use the restroom. And I did. I peeked in, and this black woman said, hey, baby, you need some water? You need some, to use the restroom? You need some food? What do you need? And I was like, restroom. And I went, I got some water. I came back out, and we kept walking. And a 2-year-old came running around this corner and ran right past us. And the prince said, are you going to the park? And my grandmother and I are looking around. There's no other adults. What is
Mm-hmm.
going on here? And
Mm-hmm.
he said, don't worry. There's more eyes on her than you think. Everybody
Yes.
knows whose child that is.
Yes.
And we teach our children, once you're old enough to walk, the whole village is your home. And we're all responsible for this child's well-being. And that level of understanding, of connectedness, is what we are missing in our
Yes.
culture of individualism, that leads to all of these other things of trying to feel importance, always comparing ourselves.
Mm.
And that's why I call it race for what? Like we're in this race to
Yes.
win because we made it a competition where there doesn't need to be competition.
No. Oh my God, I would love a community like that. And it does take a village.
Yes.
Right. And I was brought up in the 50s, and I used to have my pram, and I'd go for walks with my pram on my own,
Uh-huh.
my doll's pram, and
Yes.
or I'd be riding my bike. and you could walk, strangers could walk by, you never felt they were out to get you.
Right.
Yeah, did crime happen now and again? Yes, it did, but it was a shock when it did.
Right.
Right, because we could go out and play and then be called in for dinner or called in for lunch. And nowadays, if you don't see your children in the yard, you're in a panic.
Right.
Right, and it's what's going on? Are they old enough? Are they into drugs? Is there somebody trying to influence them? Is there my own children? My daughter was I was actually sick, and another parent was picking her up from preschool, and they were all chatting and the kids were all playing. And because my daughter is half Oriental, this Oriental woman just came and picked her up by the hand and started walking with her. And the other mom said, excuse me, and thought maybe it's an aunt.
Right.
And then started going after her. And as she went after, she dropped my daughter's hand and ran. Right. So, that is 39 years or 37 years ago. And it's like, that's, I think, when we started seeing the turning of the tide, where now we have to really keep a strong eye on our children, because there is this, I don't know, need to hurt children. And I think the need to hurt children comes from an injured child.
Mm-hmm.
And why is the child injured? Because it wasn't brought up by a community. Most
Right.
of these children are neglected. Have you seen the Sesame Street documentary on
Not yet,
Netflix?
not yet, but you're making me
Oh,
interested.
no. And the whole reason why it was formed, the whole reason why they came together, the whole process of it coming together and up, to the first 50 years, it is absolutely fascinating, because kids were watching 2-minute commercials on beer and cigarettes,
Right.
right? And they thought, we're going to give them the same snippets, but in education
Yeah.
and a community, in a sense that they all belong on the street. And a really, really good documentary. I recommend anybody to see it, just because it talks not just about Sesame, but about the culture that
Right.
was lacking and what was needed. And clearly it's been around for 50 years, so it's still needed.
Yes.
But we have to look back to what's gone wrong to understand what we need to rectify in order to walk forward.
And one of our biggest issues to me is that we created this system of lies where the powerful people have the power to define. And the beginning lie is that less melanated skin makes you superior, right? So we
Yes.
created this white supremacy culture. And I get that right now this is a hot topic and people don't want to feel bad about themselves. So they're saying, well, you can't just blame white supremacy on everything. We're no longer in that era, but we're
We
not
are.
taking responsibility for the culture itself
No.
and the problems that we all see, whether you're on the Trump land and you want changes to the progressives and you want changes, the problems that we all see are a result of a culture that was developed over the years that has not been challenged enough to be corrected. And that is part of the healing process, right? Is to challenge
Yeah.
ourselves. What makes us so great? What made us feel like this was a superior culture?
Yeah.
Right? Why can't we challenge that? The moment you challenge that, we get defensive and we're angry, and now we're the victims. And but everybody has to be challenged along the way to make these types of claims, I would believe. So the power to define and this level of deception that has been created through white supremacy. If I have to tell you that I'm better than you because I'm a man, Sarah, then I have to create reasons for you to believe that. And I
Yes.
have to create reasons for everybody around me to believe that, including men and other men. And so that I can have this support to make you eventually feel and buy into the fact that you're less than, and to make my folks, my other white men, feel like we are the best. And it's all based on feelings. It's not based on reality. It's not based on our own personal development or any of that. It's just based on these feelings that if we don't learn how to be okay with not being the best at any point, then we continue to get to this point of, look at the destructiveness of the Putin, and that's not new to people of color, seeing white
No.
folks act like this.
No. No.
So
And everything is based on fear, isn't it?
right.
Absolutely everything. There's fear and there's love. It's not fear and hate. It's
Hmm.
fear and love. And fear breeds hate, breeds violence. It is the systemic insecurity.
Right.
Why are you insecure? Because you're trying to live up to an illusion that is
Right.
delusional,
Yes.
right? You're trying to be something that is just really not required of you at all. Someone's dictated it. And if you
Right.
look back to the dictation of it, it's the opulent that have divided. And the only way they can stay powerful and have people at their beck and call is to make people feel inferior.
Right.
Now, are
Which,
you buying the inferior? Because it's only when you buy it
right.
that you become inferior. And that value that you want others to place upon you, you need to place upon yourself.
Right. Because if we look at I mean, that's what a bully does, right? You
Mm-hmm.
make you feel inferior in some way, and somebody did something, or somehow you develop that, and you make somebody else feel inferior. And I think that as we went into these countries that had an abundance,
Mm-hmm.
like Louis C.K. once said in his comedy sketch that he thought white people were aliens because there was no way you could come in and you'd see people living off the land and enjoying themselves and partying and having sex and whatever they were doing to enjoy themselves and be connected to the world. And you go, I want to destroy all of this. So what
Mm-hmm.
makes us inferior about not, instead of going, hey, how could I learn to be like that? How could I develop those feelings? Thank you for sharing with
You're
me,
right.
and let me gain something valuable from you and see the value in you. My idea was to now make you feel worse, and I can't do that as an adult. So even if I came over right now and started beating you, that doesn't make you want to do what I say, right?
No.
I I have to develop this from a very child
Mm-hmm.
infancy, and
Mm-hmm.
that takes a psychology. Like, I want us to really untangle the psychology to want to raise melanated children to believe that they are inferior and use fear techniques and use all these other techniques to make them seem like, and that's why I love Jane Elliott, because she targeted
Mm-hmm.
these third graders and said, just in a day's time, look at the difference when I started to tell one they were better and one they were worse, the difference
Yes.
in how they performed in one day's time. So imagine we've done this for
Since they were
lifetimes
born.
and
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we do what we know.
Right.
So if we impose our children with the same things that were imposed upon us, even if we think, oh, I'm not going to do it the same way,
Right. Yeah.
and we think we're doing it differently, we have to understand we're still doing it within the same culture.
Yes.
And that culture of expectation is constantly massaging you,
Yes.
right? And it's saying, no, 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 you don't want to be independent. You don't want to stand up against this. You want to belong. You want to be a part of the crowd.
Right.
That's where your importance lies, is being part of the pack. We don't want you to have an individual voice. Be a part of this chorus. That's where the power is. And yes, there is power in the chorus with individual voices, all
Right.
singing a harmonious song that benefits and uplifts people.
Mm-hmm.
But when it becomes a doom and gloom story to bring people down, how do you get to people? You suck the life out of them. You suck the
Right.
energy out of them. You make them feel worthless. And yes, it starts as a child, but those parents felt worthless.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
they're teaching their children to feel that way because that's what society has done. I think we need to actually just tear up the entire society's expectation sheet and
Right.
start all over again. Because
Right.
I've this week is my 10th anniversary of podcasting. And in the 10 years I've been doing this, I've interviewed some incredible people like yourself who've dedicated their lives to what it is they're doing. And what I've learned from this over the last 10 years has truly been incredibly enlightening and illuminating. But it always channels back to the inner child. It always
Mm-hmm.
goes back to people trying to live up to expectation. It always goes back to what they deemed was important. It always goes back to the outside living of facade and not the inside living of connection with the heart, soul, and spirit. And people are breaking free of that now, going, I can't live this expectation anymore. I can't, it's mentally caused me so much stress. I
Right.
cannot, it just feels so wrong. I have to break out. And
Right.
we're seeing more and more breaking out happening because people realize this societal expectation is so toxic and so
Right.
soul destroying. So there is a pushback, and we need more and more pushback to it, because the only way we're going to be able to achieve that inside out living is to look at that societal expectation and just tear up the whole sheet of it.
I agree wholeheartedly. There is no fixing one issue at a time inside this system. It just can't work that way. And
Yeah.
we've tried
Band-aid
it.
it, right?
We've tried it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We have broken bones all over the place, and we put a Band-Aid
Yes.
on a cut near our fingernail. And
Yes. Yes.
so there's two things, right? Part of my steps towards the end, after we go through a reparations process, is to allow a new mind to start to guide us. But
Yes.
we have to see the value of that mind before we even get to the value of, before we even get to the reparation part of the healing process. And healing takes pain, it takes discomfort to get through. You have
And
to
time
know
and time.
time and work and effort
Yes.
and focus and intentional focus on that healing. If we have a busted up knee, that may need surgery, that may need rehab, it may need some time to just sit before you have the surgery and get used to this fact that you're going to have this surgery. It takes all kind of effort. It's going to take help from other people. If I have a busted knee, I probably need somebody to help me out in certain situations. All of these things happen in this injured state. And yet the healing process, when I start to work out again and start to strengthen it, the next day is going to feel painful. I'm going to make mistakes and have setbacks. I'm going to have all of these things through this process. And yet the beauty of it, I know that if I can walk again and have this healed knee, it's going to be beautiful. And yet, so part of that is that healing process. And then the steps, as you were saying, we need a whole new mindset to this. And that's what I'm saying to my folks. Like, we need to see something different. We can't keep using the same mind to build something different. And that's one of the things I had to learn in my journey, especially in working with the African Hebrew Israelites, and even with Nellie prior to that. I came in and I was like, got it. I want to help. I got the answers. Here I am. And instead of recognizing that, no, wait a second, something happened before me to even get to this standpoint, like, shut up and learn something, right?
Yes.
I had to go through that process of really recognizing, I don't see it that way. Oh, wait. Oh, I gave it time, and that makes actually better sense to allow us to connect to one another and the earth. Oh, that makes so much better sense to bring forth strengthening our bonds and how we even heal from this sort of society. And so those things, I want to focus on that college age and even youth beyond that, because you're right, they are challenging us. We keep saying how lazy they are, how they don't want to listen to us. They're seeing us work really hard and be miserable and can't afford to pay our bills
or therapy.
Right, exactly. And one thing can set us back so far, and they're going, so wait a second, you want me to listen to you and participate in this? I got access to information you guys never had access to, that at least allows me to challenge you guys and your thought process at a way that we weren't allowed to challenge in before, because one, we didn't even have access to it. So we had to rely on the education, which only wanted to teach us how great we were and not about our mistakes, and not implement a connected education to how we would live our life outside of that. We didn't get to learn about finance. We had to learn about it if our family had finances and could teach us, but we didn't get to learn about these things in school that would uplift everybody. And so these students know that. I mean,
they do.
they do.
Yeah.
So,
I've got three millennials, and each one of them look at life in a totally different way.
mhm,
And they're approaching life in a totally different way. They had two dysfunctional parents that never should have married, right? Again, that expectation, two lost souls trying to find themselves,
right,
with each other, only to crash and burn
right,
because we were never each other's answer. The answer is an inside out journey. Um,
mhm,
but it's that willingness to go, life isn't working. I hate repeating the same pattern
right.
over and over again. I want some of that joy that
Yeah,
people from the native land had. I want to be able to get up every morning with a feeling of gratitude and purpose, and not be feeling it's a grindstone of another day.
right.
Because what's the point of living if it's like that? I had a dream last night which was really kind of plays into what we're doing right now. I dreamt that um, a philanthropist or organization was going into gang torn ghettos where the
Mhm,
gangs are just taken over and everybody's so fearful of them, being on the street, their children growing up, are they going to get caught in the gang? Always feeling repressed and fear, repressed and pressed and fear. And that just kills the psyche, kills any form of creativity, kills any form of believing they're better or they could ever get out of it. And
mhm,
it was then taking the kids that would be in the gangs, that would be going there, taking past gang members who don't want to be there, and literally having them fixing up and painting all the houses, fixing up all the gardens, fixing up inside the houses, opening up more shops, building a community that they can be proud of. And in that building of that community, feeling a sense of pride, feeling a sense of home, feeling a sense of achievement, the gangs had less and less power,
mhm.
right? And it's like we give our power away. We give it to the wrong people. And we give it out of the bullying or the fear or the expectation or the lack of self worth. Well, as you said, we've got the information. I don't care
Mhm.
how poor someone is, they're all walking around with a cell phone.
Right.
Right? There's internet on that. If you really want to get out of your situation, Google,
Mhm.
right? Or listen to my 3,000 shows here on self-discovery
Right.
media
There you
come with
go.
people like yourself, right? Many of the people that I've interviewed have come from the depths of darkness, but
Mhm.
they chose to rise up into the light, however painful it was to go through the
Mhm.
process. And they wouldn't change a thing now, wouldn't change a thing, because who they are today is triumphant of who they used to be. And they are now the teachers, the inspirers that are helping others on their journey of life because they can relate. They know what you're going through and they know how to guide you through the process. One of the things I think we're missing is people willing to participate in their own healing.
Yes.
I want a downloadable app. I want a quick fix. I want a
Right.
drug. I want a drink. I want to shoot it up. No,
Mhm.
there is nothing quick about the process.
Mhm.
Why do we take 9 months to build a child and then go for excruciating hours giving birth to them? It's so that when we hold that child, the appreciation and the value of that life in your arms. So look at that process as you birthing yourself, you giving birth to yourself, and then love and nurture yourself as
Right.
you would your own child.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, I want us less melanated folks to really acknowledge how much manipulation went into this
Yeah.
gang life mentality,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if you're familiar with the term COINTELPRO,
Mm-hmm.
um, but the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover targeted the Black Panthers specifically, but
Mm-hmm.
the rise of a Black Messiah was their overall fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? That some Black leadership would come and threaten our existence
Yeah.
as a power. And so in doing so, there was a lot of manipulation of the what became the Bloods and the Crips and other gangs of that nature by the police and by the FBI to create this negative hatred. And then you add on the systemic oppression of not of sharing the money,
Mm.
making it seem like your property was less valuable because of your skin color and all of these other things that we started to take away from Black community living that made a level of hopelessness. You had drugs, you had guns, and now you've set up the brush fire. All you had to do was light a match, and you have this
Yes.
level of gang violence and inner hate in the city. So if we have to see the value in others enough to want to heal that
Yeah.
and repair that harm, while they have to also go through their own healing process of
Yes.
wanting that problem. And so I love your dream, because that's actually one of the projects I want to do in the future,
Mm.
is really getting people all involved
Yes.
in developing the neighborhoods that have been left to depreciate, and start to fill in, re-landscape, do
Mm.
painting. And there's a project in Compton that was started by a church doing that. Every 3 months they would come to the people who would volunteer would come and just start painting
Mm.
fences or
Mm.
planting flowers or whatever it is to beautify that neighborhood. I want to take that to a
Yeah.
much level.
And I think that's where it starts, is with the community saying,
Right,
I can't heal your past, but I can give you a platform to heal your future.
right.
Right. And, another movie for you to watch is Billie Holiday with Andrea Day.
Yeah.
And, she did that song about lynching and how
Mm-hmm.
the FBI just went after it, but they went after her for drugs
Mm-hmm.
because they couldn't go after her to stop her singing that song, although they
Mm-hmm.
tried. And, the things that they did to her was just
Yeah.
horrific. And it was all about suppression. They didn't want this song to be, we don't lynch. We
Right.
don't. It was only
Right.
recently that they passed a law that lynching was illegal, folks, in 2022, for Christ's sake.
And
Yeah.
exactly. That's where I go back to my first story. We shouldn't be satisfied that we've made these
Yeah.
changes now,
Yeah.
that there's a first Black this, or that
Yeah.
we got an anti-lynching law in 2022. That is the surface of it. We need to get to the
Yes.
core
Oh, yeah.
and see the beauty. I mean,
The
just
infection is at the root.
in the connection to the earth, we've lost all of that in our culture. I
Absolutely.
ask people all the time, when you go outside, do you see the trees? Do you see the flowers? Do you see the life
Mm.
growing? Even in the weeds, we get
Yes.
so pissed off that the weeds are coming through our concrete. Well, that's because life actually exists, and
Yes.
there's something that we could actually learn from this growing
Mm.
process. And when I'm stressed out and have anxiety, when I go into my flower garden or into the
Yeah.
garden and put my hands in the dirt, my mom's always asking me to put on gloves, and I refuse to do so because I want to feel the
Yes.
earth. The
Yes.
earth provides us our life. And we're not connected to that anymore because we
No.
think of money first, and then we have to think of how we justify our behavior after that.
It's
And
all
we're,
e-commerce, isn't it? You
mm-hmm,
know, buy more, it'll make you happy. You've got to have this car, you've got to have the next cell phone, even though you bought one last week. You've got to
right,
dress like this, you've got to have a big butt like that, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Then you'll be somebody,
buddy.
right? And
And
it's
right,
like, who is benefiting? All the people that are selling it to you.
right,
Uh, who is giving them that power? You, because you keep buying it. Nature's free, folks. All she
right.
needs is some respect.
Yeah. And this idea that there's competition in our
Mm.
marketplace. And so I have to destroy you, Sarah. If I
Yeah.
have a podcast and you have a podcast, now we're competitors instead of sharing the
You're right.
same
Yeah.
space and having great conversations on both platforms, right? So all these major companies that now we have to rely on got there by destroying mom and pop shops, by
Yes.
destroying competition. And we have to write it in our business plan. If you want money, you better know who your competition is. Why can't they be shared in our
Exactly.
industry? Why do they have to be
Yes.
competition? Why do we
Yes.
have to outdo them in the race? And that's why I go back to race. It has a
Mm.
connotation of winning as well. It's not just about color of skin and
No.
ethnicity. There's a developed mentality of we have to win. And that's what I'm saying. Race for what?
Yeah.
What are we winning? What are we trying?
We're
How are
not.
we defining this?
We're
We're not.
losing. We're losing
Constantly.
incredibly, constantly. Stress is the number one killer because it
Mm-hmm.
in the dis-ease brings up the
Yeah.
cancer, brings up the heart disease, diabetes, just the amount of stress. I mean, the stress is in children. should never be. They shouldn't even know what this word means. And yet
Right.
we're seeing so many kids suffering from anxiety and depression. There's a lot of spiritual depression because
Yeah.
people like myself, empaths, we're constantly feeling this angst in the world, this disconnect, this static in the world. And it literally tears away at our very fiber. And there's a lot of this out there. And why is it? Because, yes, a great deal to do with media, social media, and let's face it, until really, I mean, advertising that we used to see on the movies when we went, or we saw on TV, is nothing like the bombardment we get through social media now. But we have to remember social media, like everything else in life, is an algorithm. If you
Hmm.
don't feed it, it won't grow. Social media is a wonderful platform if you know how to use it properly. And that means putting out to the like vibed people, right? And supporting people, celebrating people, being there for people when they need it, forming conversations, creating your own communities, just like you would in your neighborhood, right? But the moment you start feeding someone, like you mentioned, Will Smith, this was so out of Smith's character to do that.
Hmm.
What was in him in that moment that made him lose control? Because he doesn't lose control like this. He
Right.
doesn't. And he did it on one of the biggest platforms,
Right.
right? Now, is he going to remember for all the brilliant movies that he's made or the person that he is at the core and the
Exactly.
work that he's done? Is he going to always be remembered by this? And I remember putting out that so out of character. Yes, it was wrong. Yes, he needs to own it, but let's not bring out the pitchforks.
Hmm.
And it was interesting to watch the dialogue. And like, okay, while you're busy throwing stones out there, are you throwing it at the mirror?
Right. Yeah. Those of us who don't do got an awful lot to say, that's for sure.
Oh God, yes. We love to tor and quarter
And
people. We love to damn people, don't we?
right. And I was thinking as you were talking about the amount of advertisements we
Mm.
see, it's not just the amount of advertisements, it's that they're all lying in order to get you to
Oh yeah,
buy something. And the fact that, and even if they're not 100, even if what they say is true, for instance, they might tell you this sugar and artificial infested cereal has vitamin D and riboflavin, which might be true, doesn't excuse all of the other harmful
crap
things
in
that
there.
are in
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
right? That are harming us.
yes,
And so we, that spin, that idea of prestige, because prestige's original language word was defined as creating an illusion or a trickery. That idea that we've built this culture over, you're doing well if you've tricked somebody into buying timeshare, or and that
yeah,
could have caused them harm in their life,
yeah,
but you did a good job, you earned money for that company
yeah,
today and you're doing good. That trickery is rewarded. And if somebody got tricked into buying the timeshare or something of that nature, they're the problem. It's you that's the problem, that you got. So what? You shouldn't have believed it. Why shouldn't I
right.
believed it? Why should I
Why
within
must
my
we look at everything as a
right,
lie?
right,
What kind of life is that? That we have to look at everything like, oh, I don't trust you. I don't, and
right,
we've got there. We don't believe anything anymore. We take everything with a pinch of salt, right?
right,
Because we just don't believe anymore. What does that say about us as a society? That lying is okay. You know, and going back to a president you had recently who just every word was a lie and no ownership of lie. That's true narcissism. You can actually show narcissism. This is the proof. The
right,
video, this is the proof. No, not me. Not me. I didn't do it. Because there is no accountability in their language. There is no ownership in their language other than what they want to own, right? So, and we've got to be in actually quite a narcissistic society. As long as I'm okay, folks, I don't care.
mm-hmm, exactly. And that stems back to the culture that white supremacy created,
Yeah,
that this idea was a lie to begin with, and that we are great only because we want to feel great. Nothing has to justify this other than we want to feel that way. And the moment we get challenged about that, all these other things break down. And so that is what we're up against as we are untangling this in an attempt to heal.
yes. Healing, we point fingers.
Hmm.
Well, it's them, it's them. There's three
Right.
back at you.
Yeah.
Three back at you. What part did you play in it,
Hmm.
willingly or unwillingly? What are you going to do about it? And when are you going to do it?
Yeah. And how can you allow yourself to feel okay
Mm,
and at the same time recognize I've made mistakes,
yes.
I'm causing harm, I'm doing things out of, stress or whatever, but I also want to change in this system. And it doesn't work unless we decide to really tear this down and learn
Yeah.
something new.
No shame, no blame.
Hmm.
Forgive yourself
Yeah.
because you acted in an environment that dictated that you
Right.
should act that way. You now know differently,
Hmm.
right? And
Or at least,
you don't want to be that person in that society anymore. So forgive what you did
right,
or the way you thought and seek out different ways of thinking and doing.
seek out that new mind, right?
Yes.
When we go through a rehab process, if
Mm-hmm.
it's drug related
Yeah.
rehab or 12 steps, they're telling you your mind got you here.
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge it, accept it, forgive yourself, and seek out another mind to help you get to that next place of how you want to be.
Deprogram.
Mm-hmm.
We look at it on our computer. The program's slowing us down. It's obsolete. It's a dreadful program. What do? We delete it. And we
Right.
set a new progressive program that really helps us move forward.
Yeah.
Well, why are we different from a computer? The brain is a CPU, CPU, and the hard drive, that's the mechanics of everything that we do. And we do it from memory, we do it from the imprint, and the
Right.
programming, is our actions to that hard drive. Um, it doesn't matter who we are, where we are, what color we're in, um, what our money is, or anything else in life. This requires absolutely everyone to step up
Mm-hmm.
and realize there's a contamination. And the only way we're going to heal it is healing ourselves. You want love, be the love. You want peace, be peace. You want productivity, be the product. If you want community, build the community, but build it in yourself first. Everything goes back to yourself first, because otherwise you're just contributing to the same problem. You've got to go back and reset.
Mm-hmm. And I think we just also need to see the value that that healing could be, see the value that repairing our harm could bring to us as well as everybody.
Yeah.
See, we got to be connected again.
We know the atrocities that are going on. Here in Canada, we've had our First Nations, finding of the bodies of the children in the schools. Hundreds of them, run by Catholic churches, where we literally took their identity away from them, their language away from them, took them away from their families, and demanded that they be really like the white man society. And, again, the white man was operating on what was dictated to them, that supremacy. And we
Mm.
know, let us learn from the past. Let us learn from the past. You don't like the things that happened? How did they happen?
Right,
Because as a community, we said, go ahead.
right.
Now, I want to look at what's going on in the war going on right now. I keep forgetting where it is.
Ukraine.
Thank you, because I always want to go, but it's not. It's Ukraine. I heard a story last night that really just blew my mind. And it was a bunch of dads who love playing with again, names are going, the things that fly.
Oh, drones.
Thank you. And they created a whole load of drones that went and blocked all the Russians tankers who were going to surround the Kiev, and then the war would have been over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with their drones at night, snuck up on them, dropping bombs on them and stopping them from taking Kiev. A bunch of nerds, a bunch of hobbyists, a bunch of people who saw, well, we've got a solution here. Let's give it a try. And you look at the entire fight that's going on there from the people. It's going on for them fighting with their heart, their soul, their community, each other in any which way it can go, they can. And it's because they came together, right? They came together and they've shown, they also have a leader who really is the epitome of what a leader is. Because we're in this together and demanding help from everyone else. Don't just stand by and tweet about us. Come and help us, right? That invitation. They're a great example of how standing up for your community against the enemy. And the enemy is society's expectation, society's dictation, society's conditioning. And if we could stand up against that and say, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. I'm going to change from the inside out. I'm going to change my mind, come from the heart, ignite my soul, lift my spirit, and I'm going to be part of the solution. But we have to make that choice, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely do. And I believe humanity is achievable.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to take a lot of work for us, and no better time to start than now.
We've already started, in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, I was really looking at life going, do I want to be here? Right. And then I got invited to be on a different podcast network. I didn't even know what a podcast was. And I was there for 13 months live, really good training, then started my own in June of 2013. The people that, again, as I've said, that have come from such horrific circumstances, but were willing to go through the healing. And, and now the guiders and the teachers for the people that follow. It's showing me already, we are incredibly awesome. We are incredibly resilient. We have so many untapped abilities. We have a capacity to love and share our hearts in extreme abundance when we decide to heal ourselves and step out there and share that healing with others. And I really am seeing it, that the tide has turned. We've just got to keep nurturing that tide, which means people like yourself offering your program, your book, to shift that focus, to show them the skills and the tools of what they can do to start taking those steps for themselves.
Yes, right. And being able to measure what is valuable, or what really, like we've created this level of business people running things that are they more valuable than the actual service providers that are doing the work? And to be able to untangle that. And I see that in the youth, they're starting to recognize, I mean, some of them are still part of the system, there's no doubt, but there's so many more that are saying, that's not valuable, right? Let's see what work is actually bringing value to us that we can start to untangle and correct the harms of our ways.
COVID has done that for us because, here we were worshiping the Fortune 500 CEOs, the 50 billionaires, and it's like, who needs that amount of money? Right. And with that amount of money is responsibility. What are you doing to seed those possibilities for others? Because with that amount of money, you should be pouring it back in to the world and the healing and the solutions, not hoarding it on flying up to space for 11 minutes, So it is, the focus turned on the people, the janitors, the nurses, the doctors, the shopkeepers, the truck drivers, the bus keepers, all of the people that had to keep on working because there was no subsidy for them, but kept on working because they knew they needed to keep the community going. We shifted our focus to what's important. Without them, they're up at the top and nothing.
Right. Absolutely. And I hope that they get nothing for their work soon, but that's a whole nother thing. Yes, but we need to reshift who's valuable. I speak about that in the book too. The nurses and the caretakers are much more valuable than the business people sitting back there looking at their financial sheets going, what decisions do I need to make to cut where and cut here? And what what industries do we need to take back from capitalism and say
Yes.
that doesn't make sense. It doesn't provide a greater good for humanity that we make decisions in these worlds based on these, you know, based on money and control. What are we going to do to improve our life, and how are we going to do that? That becomes more valuable. And things are cyclical, right?
Mm,
And you start how you finish. I
hmm.
see this turmoil that and this level of destruction that we're seeing in the war as being sort of the end. I think that
Mm,
Trump came when in the United States and put his pedal to the metal
yeah.
about the ending of it, and he brought forth the amount of lies and deception, the
The
amount of
sewage.
winning at all
Yeah.
cost. He brought
Yeah.
it to the forefront. We needed to see that at the forefront, and yet in this cycle, there's 2 points on a circle that are closest to the beginning. It's the first step and it's the last one,
Yeah.
right? Those are the closest points. And so as we see this new cycle coming, this old cycle is towards the end, and it's in that most volatile, destructive, if I can't control it, then I'm going to destroy it kind of
Yeah.
mentality that we're up against. And at the same time, there's this beautiful shift going on in the world that are recognizing this is valuable, this is what healthy, this is brings me life, and this is bringing me death, and what are we going to do about those?
The era of the nine gods, the Weinsteins, the Putins, the Trumps, all of those people that have lived in that unaccountable optimism, where really they just didn't care who got hurt, as long as they were okay, as long as they got
Mm-hmm,
what they wanted. And I think going through COVID, where people went in, literally
mm-hmm,
into themselves and really looked at, but am I doing what I love? Am I doing
mm-hmm,
what I'm capable of? This is a time to review, renew, and pivot out into something else. And so many people have shifted their priorities. And when you see that entitlement taking advantage of the people who are struggling, because it's brought, that struggle has been
mm-hmm,
brought to the forefront in the news,
mm-hmm,
in our faces over 2.5 years. It's like, are you kidding me, mate? Are you kidding me? Your era is gone.
mm-hmm.
Your era is gone, and we're not going to put up with that anymore. You've
And
had your time.
I do welcome the fact that they go to Mars. Honestly, all the billionaires can take it to Mars. I'm more than fine with that.
Yes, and don't come back.
Yes, exactly.
I've got no qualms with people making money,
Mm-hmm,
right? But I had one beautiful person in that did on a whole Let's Get Synced. It was about our emotional climate for climate change, right?
right.
And he started a company called Pure Necessity, and it's investing in people and planet for profit, not
Mm-hmm,
profit at the expense of people and planet.
right.
We've raped and pillaged this poor planet that she's going to evict us if we don't behave ourselves.
Mm-hmm,
We've done so much harm to ourselves with this disconnect from ourselves and from our
mm-hmm,
community that the stress level is causing a crack in everyone's psyche, in everyone's well-beingness. And it's got to that stage now where it's like we're saturated, and do you remember the network when you shout out the window? I'm
mm-hmm,
pissed off and I can't take it anymore, right? And I think we're there. We're just
mm-hmm,
not going to take this anymore. And this is the time for the young people who saw our system and
mm-hmm,
said it doesn't work, for them to stand up and go, okay, you're ready for me now. Let me show you how
mm-hmm.
it's done.
Right. Yeah.
Humility, humanity, caring, kindness, self-love, community.
Sharing, support one
Mm-hmm.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those are connectedness things that we got disconnected in our era, in our area, and we brought that to the rest of the world. And we can't keep operating
No.
in a disconnected way.
It's
And
it's pulling at the
it's
very fabric of
it's
our existence. Yeah.
being revealed.
Mm,
And one of the things I like to talk about is Deepak Chopra on
mm,
Jimmy Fallon one night said right after the Trump election and progressives everywhere were screaming the world is coming to an end, he was like, no, it's a beautiful time because change brings forth chaos. And
Yes.
this is the chaos of that change, right? When you look at water going from
Mm-hmm.
steam, I mean, from liquid to steam, the boiling process is
Mm-hmm.
very chaotic. And we're going through that chaos. And there's a beautiful level of steam that's on the other side of that I want us to see and see the reason why we should work towards it.
Yeah. There's a Celtic rune called Haglas, disruption. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot have clarity without disruption, right? That
Yeah.
disruption shakes away everything that doesn't belong so that you can actually see what is
Mm-hmm.
important.
Yeah.
So where, and yes, it's from my predictors, it's a 5-year cycle of going through this change.
Mm-hmm.
We've already been through 2.5, or some say that it started back 2016. So, but it's escalating, and a massive amount of change is coming and is in process that's going to be revealed in a very big way.
Sure.
And I'm excited about it because we really do need it. People don't understand racism or entitlement, or this whole thing about putting people in boxes and putting labels on them, how stressful it is on our human psyche,
Mm-hmm.
how stressful it is on our planet, how it disconnects us, and how we completely have lost our way of what really is important in life. And some people say, why put this show under mental health? Because we're all in a mental crisis right now.
Right.
And the only way we're going to get out of it is one person at a time. And that one person being you,
Yeah.
being me, being each one of us. We are the solution we seek.
Yeah. And healing's going to bring forth a beautiful change.
Yeah.
So,
Now, you said that you knew Nelly. And
uh-huh.
he's a prime example, as so many people look at, the fame and the fortune, and he's made it and this and that. But nobody looks behind the scenes. And in what we are seeing amongst so many stars now, there is the reveal,
Mm-hmm.
bipolar stress, or, struggles that they had to get there. And everybody looks at, but you're successful, you're
Right.
rich, you're famous, you must have it all. And they don't know the turmoil that is within
Mm-hmm.
inside. How long have you known him?
I've known Nellie since the 8th grade,
Mm.
basically. Mm-hmm. And the summer afterwards, we became very close, and we were close for about 14 years until I left the organization and went into working with the Hebrew Israelites, which I met through his uncle.
All right. So the synchronicity.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's just something that we need to drop, isn't it? That this illusion that if you're rich and famous, or you have a lot of followers, that now suddenly you're meant to be happy, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's what happiness is. And I think if we could just, um, I'll get some people used to, I don't get it anymore, but people say, well, how many followers do you have? And I'll consider coming on your show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're doing me a favor,
Right.
And I go, whether it's one or whether it's 1,000, it's what impact do you have
Right.
on that person. When these shows go out, I have no control of who's
Mm-hmm.
going to hear them, who's going to listen to them, who it's going to impact. It's just my job to put that information out there, that wisdom out there. It's up to you whether you pick it up or not. And
Right.
if you're so caught up in the numbers, in that self-importance, you're sending the wrong message.
Right. And that's what our system says. If I
Mm,
gotta have followers, because followers leads to
mm,
this level of value and
mm.
this level of capital, and instead of connectedness. And so yes, I agree with you.
The
And
same with
cert
your book, right?
Mhm,
Everybody wants to write the number one bestseller, became the next J.K. Rowling.
mhm,
And again, if your book hits one person and shifts their perspective, puts them on a journey of rethinking,
mhm,
reevaluating, really truly seeing that outside world and choosing to change their inside world. Hallelujah, right?
right, absolutely. I've felt that the other day from a person that interviewed me and wanting to read it and started to text me afterwards that he wanted to be a part of the change.
Mhm.
And he's coming from a place and has an audience that needs to change. And I don't know how much change versus the resistance he'll feel will be happening, but that's it almost brought a tear to my eye because that's the
Mm.
target of the book, is to bring forth the change in someone that didn't want to or didn't know how to change before that.
That there's a lot of people that want to but don't know how.
Right.
And there isn't a one size that fits all. There isn't
Right.
a one person that
Certainly.
has all the answers. I mean, this is why I have such diverse people on here. You're going to speak to someone who likes your style, likes your approach,
Right.
that they have a synergy with you.
Mhm.
And other people may seek somebody else out. The whole point is seek someone out.
Right.
Why do we do these podcasts? We do it to show you we don't have all the answers, but we have some of the answers and we're willing to share. And we may
Right.
only be one person in your journey of life. You may have dozens of people who are going to help you along the way. And don't look for the one nice, neat little package with the bow on the top that's got all the answers and everything's hallelujah, right?
Yes, and don't think that if you read my book, that which I encourage you to read, but don't think that that solves the problem. It's from what you do. The whole hope of the book is that it provides you some platform and some level of a journey kind of pathway that helps to guide through the change. But the change itself is going to come in different shapes and
Yes.
sizes as you go on your journey through the change process. There'll be setbacks and whatnot.
Mm.
I was uncomfortable with the term steps because I didn't want you to think you had to finish one step to be on the other. You're going to go through changes of
So cha
needing
cha
to
cha, isn't it?
yeah,
Cha 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 cha
exactly,
cha cha cha.
re-examine. Exactly. And so they're just 7 steps. They're not orderly fashion. They're
Right.
just 7 steps.
But that can be repeated over and over again. People think, well, I've done the 7 steps now. What
Right.
difference? No, those 7 steps are in this application.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
you can use those 7 steps in a different application.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
please do not look at yourself as one flat piece of cardboard,
Right.
right? You are so multi-layered. There's so much beautiful layers of psyche inside of you that those 7 steps will help this psyche. And then as that wakes up and gets revealed, you know you need to use them over here in this part of
Right.
your psyche. So it's not just 7 steps and that's it. It's 7 steps constantly becomes a pattern of using in all aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But free will has to be the first choice, right?
Yeah.
I want to take the 7 steps because you can't help
Mm-hmm.
them take those 7 steps until
Right.
they've given
I,
themselves permission.
yeah. I can present it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. We can't help anyone unless you're willing to be helpful. You've got to ask for it. You've got to say,
Mm-hmm.
I want it. There's 3 words I don't like: compare, competitive, and well, I don't like the other word. It's just left me at the present. I'm having one of those days today. But when we are trying to compare ourselves with other people, we're letting ourselves down. You're not meant to be someone else, right? When we're constantly in competition with everybody, that means we're fighting, we're in the race. What are you trying to win?
Right.
What's the prize? Because the prize has been inside of you all the time,
Yeah.
right? So, comparison and competition. Oh, yeah, and negative talk,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we get upset if other people speak negatively to us. But how much negative talk is going on in your own head?
Head. Right. I have a wonderful friend who has had suffered through some traumatic experiences, and because of that, at times, is so I forget the big word for it, but talks down about herself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing,
Self-deprivation.
yes, that was the word. I was going to say
Degradation.
it wrong,
Yeah.
but but that's what I want her and so many of her friends and I speak of that. Like we want you to stop that,
Yes.
but at some point she's got to start practicing some other things, right? And so I actually see that lately, and that's a beautiful thing, that's going to help us get out of that. But trauma needs to
Yes.
be healed. It needs
Yeah.
to be healed. And there's
Not
a
avoided.
beautiful, beautiful opportunity in the healing of what can come at the end of that healing process or later on in that journey. So,
A repetition. You
right.
know, it takes um 8 positives to erase
Mm-hmm.
1 negative.
Mm-hmm.
You have a negative thought, you've now got to insert 8 positives for the psyche to attach to the positives and not be feeding the negative. The old rubber band is good for that when you're first
Mm-hmm.
doing, right? Negative thought, snap, associate the negative thoughts with
Mm-hmm.
pain, and you're not going to want to go there, but you must then speak to the positive thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, that goes back to no shame, no blame, forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You acted in the parameters of your knowledge of society's expectation. You now know it's wrong. Forgive what you did
Right.
and paint your own canvas as you wish to see yourself.
Yeah. Very much so. Letting go and being able to move on is a very important step.
Why is that song so popular from Frozen? Let It Go. It's
Yes.
not just a child song. How many
No.
adults sing that? And it's because we do, and we recognize we've got to let things go.
Right.
You can't embrace the new without, it's this spring cleaning, right? Why do we spring clean? Why do we clean our house? We get rid of the old and have everything fresh and
Mm-hmm.
new and possible. Well, we
Mm-hmm.
want those possibilities. You can't have that if you're still carrying the garbage around with you.
Right. Very well said.
So, how do people become a part of your program?
So you can find information on raceforwhat.com. The program itself that supports the book is being developed, and I hope to take it to schools and youth organizations. And I'm working with others in a collaborative manner to put that together. But raceforwhat.com is where you can follow me for what's being built. You can get the book, and then on the social medias, almost all of them, other than Twitter, is JD Mass One, but Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram are all Race for What.
Yeah, we got to ask ourselves this question. What are we racing for? What?
Mm-hmm.
What? And you
Right.
know how many people can't answer that,
Right.
right? And it's like, well, can you tell me? And the other
Yeah.
question is, what is enough?
Yeah.
Oh, it's only if I just have this, only if I just had that, only if I was there. Is that going to make you happier? Because it's avoidance. And what is addiction?
Mm-hmm.
Avoidance.
Right.
You are subsidizing that pain or trying to eliminate that pain with subsidences with that is only the band-aid,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're avoiding going through the process to heal yourself. There is no escaping the healing. And the more you
Mm-hmm.
put it off, the harder it gets.
Right.
We've got some work to do, haven't we?
Yes, we do. And it's a beautiful journey of work.
Yes. Because there isn't just hope at the end of it. There really, utterly is a beautiful blank canvas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I say that each one of us is in discovery of what our instrument is.
Mm-hmm.
When we discover that instrument, we learn how to play it and play it well, play it
Yeah.
with heart, play it with meaning. Then we look for our orchestra to join. And in that orchestra, it's playing in harmony, in sync with each other to resonate out like a symphony of invitation. We want to work with other people. We want that community to build our communities up that we can be proud of, that we can stand tall in, that we can feel we've participated in. But we've got to learn our own instrument first.
Right. Absolutely.
So, what are you racing towards, folks? I hope that you're racing towards a new era in your own life, a new beginning, a new. That society, by the way, folks, is dictated by you. It's been dictated upon us. But in the past, we bought it. We're not buying anymore. that consumer withers up, that conglomerate just disappears when we stop buying from them. And we can create a new community where we are living as one beautiful orchestra, each one of us being respected for our own music and being a part of the upliftingness, the celebration, the possibilities, the creation of our own beautiful global society. And if we want that change, we've got to be that change, which means we must become the change that is going to be a part of that change.
Mm-hmm.
It is exciting, isn't it?
It is very exciting.
I'm loving where we're going right now. So ask yourselves, race for what? What are you chasing? Really, do you need to chase it? Who's dictated that you chase it? Talk about racism. How many of us have fallen into a fold of certain racist opinions or outlooks that have been imposed on us? We don't want you pussyfooting around people being so scared to talk to people that are different skin colored. And that goes for, different color on white and white on different color. We're also scared to say the incorrect thing that we've stopped talking to each other. Just simply inquire. What is the appropriate terminology? Tell me about your culture. Tell me about growing up. Ask the questions and they will educate you, and then that bridge will be built. Right?
Approach with curiosity.
Yes. Yes. I love those that are curious and wondrous and just look to life as an adventure, because it is an adventure to go on that could be so utterly wonderful with the right information in your backpack and the right approach to life.
Yes.
Thanks so much for sharing with us here today.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a wonderful conversation.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And so much we did hit on here today, folks. Remember, I'm always encouraging, like book clubs, podcast clubs, listening to a show with other people, and then each one of you kind of coming back and what did you get from it? What points stuck out on you? Having that conversation and taking it further. Get the book, look at his site, question your own self. Are you ready for that change? Yes, you are. You know you are because you listened to this show. So reach out to JD and let him help you on those 7 steps that can be applied over and over again to every aspect of your life, and start moving forward to a different platform that is more beneficial to you, to the community, to our planet, to our universe. So until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.